In this video, we're going to consider some of the basic plotting functions within R, as well as some of the additional arguments that you can pass to these functions. So first things first, we will again read in our student survey data set so that we can consider the data in this data set and some of the variables that we might look at. Now again, some of the variables that we see in here are, as we can see in this lower left-hand corner. Now with plotting, a lot of times we need to consider what type of variable we are looking at. So let's consider first this award variable. Now this variable is looking at the type of award a student would like to win, whether it be an Olympic medal, an Academy Award, or a Nobel Prize. Now the two most commonly used plots for categorical variables are a pie chart, which is going to be created using the pie function. And so I'm going to do pie student survey sub award. Now, as a note, you can't just pass in direct data into the pie function. If you try to run this, you're going to get an error, as we see up here. So instead, what we need to do is pass in counts, which can be gathered using the table function. Now the table function in R is going to create a table, or is going to count the number of occurrences. So if I were to do table and then student survey award, we'll see that there are 31 students that want to win an Academy Award, 149 for a Nobel Prize, and the remaining 192 for an Olympic medal. Now if we pass in this table into pie, then R is going to generate this pie chart for us. Now as a note, there are some additional options you can do with the pie function. Some of those include changing the labels that show up on each of your slices in the pie. Others include at what point the pie starts splitting, if we're splitting clockwise, some other things along there. There are also some basic options such as color and main. With color and main, you can specify the color of the slices. And so let's say that we want blue and red, and I'm going to do dark green. Additionally, we can give this a title under main. So type of award. So if we add these items in, now we see that we have our blue, red, and dark green for our slices, and we have our main title up at the top. So you can play around with some of the options in pie if you would so desire. Now, additionally, a pie chart, I do want to point out, there is a even warning in R that pie charts are often a very bad way of displaying information. If you have more than two levels of your categorical variable, there are better options, and one of those is a bar plot. Now bar plot we're going to call almost the exact same way as we did pie, but we're going to use bar plot instead. Now with bar plot, we run here, now we are going to get bars, and we can see we've again split between our three variable types. Now bar plot also allows us to do some additional arguments, including xlab, which is the X label that we would like. And if we so desire, we can add a Y label by using ylab. So if we pass these items into bar plot, now we see that these are updated and we have some additional items here. Now there is an additional option that you can do with bar plot. Say that you want to consider two variables at the same time. So now I'm no longer interested just in award, but perhaps I want to know, how does award coincide with smoking status? Now if I pass in this call to a table where I have two variables, one, if we take a look at this table, it's going to give us the cross tabulation of those two variables. So we can see there are 29 subjects that wanted to win an Academy Award that do not smoke, and 2 that wanted an Academy Award and do smoke. Now with two variables, if we just run bar plot as this is, we're going to get stacked values. And so we can see, okay, the majority of people don't smoke, but within that non-smoking status, we can see the breakdown between our three variables. We can add an option beside equals true, which will change this, and now it's going to split by smoking status, our second variable in this table column, and then it's going to put the bars beside each other for the type of award. As a final option, and this one's often a first pass, you can add in legend equals true to get an automatic legend added to your plot. Now, in some cases, this will work just fine. This is one scenario where it works, but if you had really tall bars over here, this legend may be over the top of those bars, and it may be difficult to see, so please be careful with those. All right, a couple other functions to consider. Now let's consider continuous variables. So perhaps I am interested in looking at height in inches. Now, for continuous variables, the two main functions we tend to use are boxplot. And so with boxplot, we do want to pass in the full variable set. And so I can just pass in boxplot, pass in the height variable, and it's going to create this boxplot for me. Now, by default, it's going to list outliers separately and draw our quartiles and our 5-number summary in general. Another option you can add with boxplot if you would like is say, oh, I don't want it to be up and down, I want it to be horizontal. And so if you change that argument, now it's going to stretch it out and draw it this way. You can add a color if you so desire. You can add X label, Y label, main title, everything that we did up with the pie chart in the beginning. Another often used function for continuous variables is a histogram. Now we don't have to type histogram the full way out. Instead, we can just do hist. Once again, pass in our variable and run this. Now, as a note, this will create a histogram, but the histogram function also defaults and gives you an X label and a main title. You may want to change these as you as you go through. Now, one final item with these. Say that, once again, maybe I want to consider student survey, so height, but I want to consider, hey, how does this look with relation to that award variable? And so I can do what's called a side-by-side box plot by entering in the data in this method here, where I do my continuous variable, a tilde, and then my categorical variable. And this will do side-by-side box plots, where we get a box plot for each and every level of our categorical variable. All right, so those are some basic plots. One last plot to consider is just the plot function, if perhaps you wanted a scatter plot for two continuous variables. So perhaps I want to look at how does height correspond to weight. And so if we add these two variables in, then we can get a scatter plot. Now again, X label, Y label, no main title by default. So you will likely want to change those. And one argument that is often used is the PCH, which is going to change this shape that we see in here. By default, you get open squares. If you were to change this to 2, then perhaps you get open triangles. My favorite is 16, which gives me closed dots. So there are some basic plotting functions in R, and hopefully this helps you as you want to visualize your data.